At precisely 10:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, Marcus Jackson set aside his mop and entered Grayson Corp's executive boardroom unannounced. Laughter erupted as the all-white leadership team spotted the 68-year-old black janitor in their sacred space. "Lost your way, old man," Ethan Grayson sneered, his Harvard MBA and family name a shield for his embezzlement schemes. "Not at all," Marcus replied, sliding a document across the table. The laughter died as they read official proof that this invisible man they'd degraded for decades was actually the majority shareholder. While they'd seen only a janitor, Marcus had been watching, documenting, and waiting for this perfect moment. His engineering degree from Howard had gathered dust, but his ownership papers hadn't. Now, as 400 employees faced layoffs, Marcus Jackson would finally reclaim his company from those who never bothered to see the man behind the mop. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The hallways of Grayson Corp gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Marcus Jackson pushed his cleaning cart through the empty corridors at 5:30 a.m. His weathered hands gripped the handle with practiced ease, the calluses telling stories of decades of hard work. At 68, his movements were slower than they once were, but no less precise. The company wouldn't officially come to life for another 2 hours, but Marcus preferred the quiet of dawn. It gave him time to think, to observe, to remember. He paused outside the executive suites, fishing out his ring of keys. The polished brass nameplate on the nearest door read Ethan Grayson, CEO. Marcus allowed himself a slight smile as he unlocked the door and slipped inside. The office was immaculate, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Marcus emptied the trash can, careful not to disturb the meticulously arranged papers on the mahogany desk. As he worked, his eyes drifted to a framed photograph on the wall, a much younger Ethan standing beside his father, Henry Grayson. Henry had his arm around Ethan's shoulder, both men beaming with pride at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of Grayson Corp's first headquarters. What the photograph didn't show was the third person who had been standing just out of frame that day. Marcus dusted the frame with particular care, his reflection ghosting over the glass surface. He remembered that day well, the day Henry had promised him the world. The day before, everything changed. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled Marcus from his reverie. He quickly gathered his supplies and headed for the door, nearly colliding with Linda Harper, the company's HR director, who was arriving unusually early. "Oh," Linda startled, her hand flying to her chest. When she registered who stood before her, her surprise morphed into dismissive recognition. "It's just you, Marcus." "Morning, Miss Harper," Marcus replied, his voice gentle but dignified. "Sorry to startle you." Linda barely acknowledged the apology, her attention already fixed on her phone. "While you're here, the executive bathroom needs attention. Someone complained about water spots on the mirrors yesterday." She wrinkled her nose slightly. "And make sure you use the proper cleaning supplies this time. The smell was off last week." Marcus nodded, swallowing the response that rose to his throat. "Yes, ma'am." "Good," Linda said, already walking past him into her office. She paused at the doorway. "And, Marcus, the cleaning closet on the 3rd floor still smells like you've been eating your lunch in there. The executives have commented on it. Find somewhere else, please." The door closed behind her, and Marcus stood alone in the hallway, his expression unchanged, save for a slight tightening around his eyes. The 3rd floor closet was indeed where he took his lunch breaks, the only space in the building where he could sit in private for 30 minutes. The building had a cafeteria, of course, but the last time Marcus had tried to eat there, Ethan Grayson himself had made a comment about keeping the help separate from the talent. Marcus pushed his cart toward the executive bathroom, his shoulders straight despite the weight they carried. 20 minutes later, he was polishing the last mirror when the bathroom door swung open, and 2 young executives walked in, deep in conversation. "I'm telling you, Chad, the old man has lost his touch," the taller of the two was saying. "Last quarter's numbers were abysmal, and now he's talking about cutting another 15% of the workforce. Lower-level employees only, I assume," Chad replied, straightening his tie in the mirror Marcus had just cleaned, seemingly oblivious to the janitor's presence. Naturally, Can't cut the decision makers. The first man laughed. He finally noticed Marcus and lowered his voice slightly, though not enough. Speaking of which, how old do you think this one is? Shouldn't there be an age limit on pushing a mop? Chad snickered, glancing at Marcus's reflection. Maybe he can't afford to retire, or maybe he just loves the smell of bleach and cleaning up after his betters. He raised his voice. Isn't that right, old timer? Marcus kept his eyes down, focusing on wringing out his cloth in the sink. Bathroom's all clean. Gentlemen, he said quietly, gathering his supplies. Thank God for small mercies, the first executive muttered. At least they still know how to follow orders. As Marcus moved toward the door, Chad stepped slightly into his path, forcing Marcus to sidestep around him. Hey, while you're at it, someone spilled coffee. Be a good boy and take care of that, would you? The condescension in the young man's voice was unmistakable, the boy sliding from his lips with practiced ease despite Marcus being old enough to be his grandfather. Yes, sir, Marcus replied, his voice steady even as something hardened in his chest. Right away, throughout the morning, similar interactions played out across the building. A female executive held her nose dramatically as he passed, whispering loudly to her colleague about that smell. Two managers abruptly stopped their conversation when Marcus entered their office to vacuum, watching him with suspicious eyes, as if he might steal something if not closely monitored. An intern nearly knocked over Marcus's cart, then had the audacity to snap, "Watch where you put that thing," before continuing down the hall. Each slight was small on its own, a drop in a lifetime's ocean of indignities, but together they formed the daily current against which Marcus had swum for decades. By lunchtime, Marcus retreated to his small sanctuary, the third-floor cleaning closet that Linda had complained about. He pulled a small folding stool from behind the shelves of supplies and sat down heavily, his knees creaking in protest. From a worn leather lunch bag, he extracted a simple sandwich and a thermos of coffee. As he ate in the dim light of the closet, surrounded by the smell of industrial cleaners, his mind drifted back to a different time. He'd been young then, barely 30, working as a janitor for a much smaller company, the fledgling startup that Henry Grayson had built from nothing. Henry had been different from his son. He'd known Marcus's name, asked about his family, treated him like a human being. There had been that night, the night the company nearly collapsed. Marcus had been working late, emptying trash cans, while Henry sat alone in his office, head in his hands, surrounded by bills and final notices. Marcus had brought him a cup of coffee, and somehow they'd started talking. Marcus had mentioned the savings he'd scraped together over the years, planning to open his own small business someday. You know what, Marcus, Henry had said, eyes suddenly alight with an idea. I'd rather have one honest partner than 10 wealthy sharks. The memory dissolved as the closet door suddenly opened, flooding the small space with harsh fluorescent light. Ethan Grayson stood in the doorway, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the utilitarian setting. So this is where you hide, Ethan said, his nose wrinkling at the smell. Did Linda not speak to you about this? We've had complaints. Marcus quickly stood, tucking away the remains of his meal. Sorry, Mr. Grayson, I was just finishing. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he took in the small stool, the lunch bag. Is this some kind of living arrangement I should know about? Because I'm pretty sure that would violate about a dozen health codes. No, Dosa, Marcus replied, feeling a flush of embarrassment despite himself. Just my lunch break. Well, take it elsewhere, Ethan said dismissively, preferably outside the building. This isn't a homeless shelter. His eyes flicked over Marcus's worn uniform, though I can see how you might be confused about that. Before Marcus could respond, Ethan's attention shifted to his phone, which had begun to ring. I need to take this. Make sure this closet is emptied of your personal effects by the end of the day. He walked away without waiting for a response, already engaged in his call. Marcus stood in the closet doorway for a long moment, a familiar anger burning low in his chest. Slowly, deliberately, he packed away his lunch and folded the stool, placing it in his cart. But instead of continuing his rounds, he wheeled the cart to the employee locker room in the basement. The room was deserted at this hour. Marcus approached his locker, an old, dented metal box in the far corner. He spun the combination lock with practiced fingers and opened the door. Inside, hanging neatly, was a spare uniform. Below it sat a battered leather briefcase that looked out of place among the humble surroundings. Marcus carefully removed the briefcase and placed it on the nearby bench. The brass latches had long since lost their shine, but they opened smoothly at his touch. Inside lay a collection of documents, protected by plastic sleeves, share certificates, contracts, letters all meticulously preserved over decades. His fingers traced over one document in particular, a share certificate made out in his name, representing 51% ownership of Grayson Corporation, signed by Henry Grayson himself. Next to it lay a handwritten letter, the paper yellowed with age, but the words still clear. Otis, my friend, without your belief in me and your investment, there would be no Grayson Corp. I know you want to remain in the background for now, and I'll respect that wish, but never forget, this company is as much yours as it is mine. When the time comes, these shares will speak for you. The time had never seemed right to reveal the truth first out of respect for Henry and his vision. Then, after Henry's unexpected death 15 years ago, it was the shock of watching Ethan take control and systematically dismantle his father's legacy. By the time Marcus realized what was happening, Ethan had established himself so thoroughly that challenging him seemed impossible. But today, something had shifted. Perhaps it was the accumulation of small indignities. Perhaps it was overhearing the executives discussing another round of layoffs that would devastate the lower-level employees who had given years to the company. Or perhaps it was simply that, at 68, Marcus had finally run out of reasons to wait. He carefully returned the documents to the briefcase, closed it, and placed it back in his locker. Not today, but soon. The reckoning that had been decades in the making was finally approaching. As Marcus resumed his afternoon cleaning duties, he paused outside the main conference room, where he could hear raised voices discussing the company's future, his company's future. His expression remained impassive, but his eyes held a determination that had been dormant for too long. The time for waiting was over. 3 days later, Grayson Corp was abuzz with tension as key personnel hurried toward the main conference room. An emergency board meeting had been called. The email marked urgent landing in executive inboxes just that morning. The subject line, strategic restructuring and asset management, was corporate speak for what everyone feared: massive layoffs and selling off company divisions. Marcus stood quietly in the corridor outside the conference room, wiping down the glass display case that housed the company's awards and accolades. Through the reflection, he watched board members file in, men and women in expensive suits, their faces set in expressions of grave importance. None of them so much as glanced his way. Ethan Grayson was the last to arrive, flanked by his CFO, Victor Lang, and his loyal right-hand man, Nathan Brooks. Ethan's stride was confident, almost arrogant, as he swept past Marcus without acknowledgement. "Is everyone here?" Ethan's voice carried through the still open door. "Close that, will you?" He directed at his assistant, pointing to the door. "We don't need the maintenance staff eavesdropping on company business." The door closed with a soft click, but not before Marcus caught the dismissive wave of Ethan's hand in his direction. Marcus continued polishing the display case, his movements deliberate as he positioned himself near the air, vent a spot he knew from experience, carried sound from the conference room into the hallway. Inside, Ethan stood at the head of the long mahogany table, surveying the gathered board members with the practiced confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Ethan began, his voice carrying clearly through the vent. "As you know, our last quarter was challenging. Our profit margins have shrunk to unacceptable levels, and shareholders are demanding action." Victor Lang, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, distributed folders to everyone present. "The numbers don't lie," he said, his voice thin and reedy. "We're looking at a 15% drop in revenue compared to last year's projections, which is why," Ethan continued, "I've assembled a comprehensive restructuring plan." He tapped his folder for emphasis. Page 3 outlines the first phase, a strategic workforce reduction of 20% across all departments. A murmur of concern rippled through the room. 20%, questioned Evelyn Carter, one of the longest-serving board members. "That's nearly 400 employees, 387, to be precise," Victor interjected, "primarily from lower and mid-level positions where redundancies can be eliminated without impacting core operations." Outside, Marcus's hand stilled on the glass. 387 people with families, mortgages, dreams people who had given years, sometimes decades, to Grayson Corp, his company. Back inside, Ethan was already moving on. Phase 2 involves liquidating underperforming assets. The Research and Development Division hasn't produced a marketable innovation in 18 months. We'll retain a skeleton crew for appearance's sake, but essentially, we're shutting it down. But R&D was your father's pride and joy, Evelyn protested. Henry believed innovation was the heart of Grayson Corp. Ethan's laugh was short and devoid of humor. My father also believed in paying the janitor more than market rate because he seemed like a good soul. Sentimentality doesn't keep shareholders happy. Evelyn. Laughter rippled around the table at Ethan's comment. Nathan Brooks leaned forward, his expression serious. Despite the laughter, we've also identified some irregular accounting practices that need addressing. Victor has been working with me to clean things up. Victor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Yes? Well, there have been some creative bookkeeping measures implemented over the years, nothing illegal, of course, he added hastily, but perhaps not entirely transparent to shareholders. The point is, Ethan cut in, these changes need to happen immediately. The first round of terminations begins next week, followed by the asset liquidation. I've already spoken with our PR team about managing the optics. From his position by the air vent, Marcus could hear every word. His hands, which had maintained their steady rhythm on the display glass, finally stilled completely. This wasn't just a cost-cutting measure, this was the systematic dismantling of everything. Henry Grayson had built everything Marcus had helped build. Inside the conference room, the discussion continued, with board members raising concerns only to have. Ethan smoothly dismissed them. The conversation shifted to logistics, who would handle the terminations, how severance would be structured, which assets would be sold first. The cleaning staff can be reduced by half, Ethan was saying. We contract with an outside service for the heavy work cheaper, and we won't have to worry about benefits. Speaking of which, Victor interjected, there's that old janitor, Jackson, I think. He's well past retirement age but still on full benefits. That alone could save us. Daddy's old charity case, Ethan interrupted with a dismissive wave. I've been meaning to phase him out for years. Consider it done. More laughter followed, punctuated by a comment from Nathan. Maybe we should keep him around. He doesn't miss much, might be good to have eyes and ears on the ground floor. What? The old black janitor, someone else added. I doubt he understands half of what he overhears. Probably just happy to have a job at his age. The casual cruelty of the remark hung in the air for a moment before the conversation moved on. Outside, Marcus felt a familiar weight settle in his chest, the weight of being seen, but not truly seen, heard but not listened to, present, but somehow invisible. A younger employee, Daniel Reed from the accounting department, approached the conference room, files in hand. He slowed as he noticed Marcus standing by the display case. They've been in there a while, Daniel commented, nodding toward the closed door. Word is they're planning major cuts. Marcus nodded, carefully folding his polishing cloth. Seems that way. Daniel hesitated, then lowered his voice. I've seen some strange numbers coming across my desk. Lately transfers to accounts. I can't trace. Invoices for services we never received. He shook his head. Something's not right. But when I tried to bring it up with my supervisor, he shut me down hard. Before Marcus could respond, the conference room door opened, and Nathan Brooks stepped out. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Daniel talking to Marcus. Reed. Nathan's voice was sharp. Don't you have work to do? Yes, sir, Daniel replied quickly. I was just bringing these reports for the meeting. Give them here, Nathan commanded, extending his hand. As Daniel passed over the files, Nathan added, and, in the future, remember that fraternizing with the maintenance staff during work hours is discouraged. We pay you to crunch numbers, not make friends. Daniel flushed with embarrassment but held his ground. Mr. Jackson was just helping me with a spill near the display case. Nathan's gaze swept over both men, clearly disbelieving but unwilling to prolong the interaction. Fine, get back to your desk. He turned to Marcus. And you, the executive restrooms need attention. Someone was sick in there earlier. Right away. Sir, Marcus replied, his voice betraying none of the anger that flashed in his eyes. As Nathan returned to the conference room with Daniel's files, the young accountant lingered just long enough to whisper. "They don't even know your first name, do they? Justin's janitor, or the old black guy." "It's not right." Marcus gave Daniel a small, appreciative nod before gathering his cleaning supplies. "Some people only see what they expect to see, Mr. Reed." Throughout the rest of the afternoon, Marcus went about his duties with his usual quiet efficiency, but his mind was elsewhere. He found himself pausing outside the records room on the 4th floor, a room he rarely had cause to enter. After a moment's hesitation, he used his master key to slip inside. The records room was dimly lit and filled with filing cabinets containing documents too sensitive or too old to be fully digitized. Marcus moved carefully between the rows, scanning the labels until he found what he was looking for: Executive Compensation and Benefits. 2010-2020. He didn't have much time. Drawing on decades of knowledge about the building security routines, he quickly located and pulled several folders, laying them open on a small side table. His eyes scanned the pages rapidly, looking for confirmation of his suspicions. There it was, evidence of systematic financial manipulation, executive bonuses that far exceeded approved amounts, funds diverted from employee pension accounts, falsified board minutes authorizing actions that had never been properly voted on. The door to the records room suddenly opened, and Marcus froze, but it was only the night security guard making his rounds. "Oh, Mr. Jackson," the guard said, surprised. "Didn't expect anyone to be in here this late. Just doing some deep cleaning." "Jim," Marcus replied smoothly, casually standing to block the guard's view of the open folders. "Haven't gotten to this room in a while." The guard nodded, uninterested. "Well, don't work too late. Building's pretty much empty now." After the guard left, Marcus carefully photographed several key documents with his old flip phone before returning everything exactly as he had found it. As he exited the records room, his mind was made up. The briefcase in his locker contained his nuclear option, but these new documents provided the context that would make his case irrefutable. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Grayson Corp earlier than usual. He headed straight to his locker and retrieved the leather briefcase, its weight both familiar and momentous in his hands. Today was the day, decades in the making. He changed from his janitor's uniform into the only suit he owned, purchased years ago for his daughter's wedding. It was slightly outdated and a bit loose on his frame, but it was clean and dignified. He combed his grey hair neatly and straightened his tie, looking at his reflection in the small mirror inside his locker door. For a moment, he barely recognized himself, not because of the suit, but because of the fire in his eyes, a determination that had been banked for too long. The face that looked back at him wasn't that of a passive janitor, but of an owner about to reclaim what was rightfully his. At precisely 10:00 a.m., Marcus knew the board would reconvene to finalize the details of their strategic restructuring. He made his way to the conference room floor, briefcase in hand, his heart pounding, but his resolve unwavering. Outside the conference room, Ethan's assistant looked up in surprise as Marcus approached, clearly not recognizing him at first without his uniform. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked, her confusion evident. "The board is in a private meeting right now." "I know," Marcus replied simply. "They're expecting me." Before she could protest, Marcus stepped past her and opened the conference room door. The conversation inside abruptly halted as all heads turned toward the interruption. Ethan Grayson, mid-sentence, stared in confusion. When recognition dawned on his face, it was followed quickly by annoyance. "Jackson, what are you doing? And why are you dressed like that?" The room erupted in snickers and confused murmurs. "Is that the janitor?" Someone whispered loudly. "What's he wearing? Is that suit from the 90s? Another board member remarked, prompting more laughter. Nathan Brooks rose from his seat, moving toward Marcus with a threatening posture. "This is a closed meeting. You need to leave immediately." Marcus stood his ground, his dignity intact despite the mockery. "I'm afraid I can't do that. Mr. Brooks, you see, I have something important to contribute to this discussion about the future of Grayson Corporation." Ethan's face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. "You contribute," he laughed, looking around the table to ensure others joined in. "Look, Jackson, I don't know what you think you overheard, but this is a board meeting, not a janitorial review. If you're worried about your job, take it up with HR after we're done here." The laughter grew louder, more confident. One executive mimicked pushing a mop, while another made a crude joke about Marcus being lost on his way to the custodial closet. "Is this some kind of protest?" Victor Lang asked nervously. "Because security can be here in 30 seconds. Through it all, Marcus remained calm, even as the color of his skin became the subject of more than one whispered joke. At the table, he placed his briefcase on the conference table with deliberate precision. "Gentlemen, ladies," Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through the laughter. "I'm not here as a janitor today. I'm here as the majority shareholder of Grayson Corporation." The laughter died abruptly, replaced by confused silence. Ethan recovered first, his face red with anger. "That's absurd. This little stunt will cost you your job. Nathan. Call security." "Before you do that," Marcus replied, opening his briefcase to reveal the neatly organized documents within. "I suggest you take a look at these." He removed the share certificate, the original, not a copy, and placed it in the center of the table for all to see. The Grayson Corp logo at the top was an earlier version, and Henry Grayson's signature at the bottom was unmistakable. "What is this supposed to be?" Ethan demanded, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "This," Marcus said calmly, "is the certificate for 51% ownership of Grayson Corporation, issued to me by your father 35 years ago. I've been content to remain silent all these years, out of respect for Henry and his vision. But after what I heard yesterday, after seeing how far this company has strayed from its founding principles, that silence ends today." The room had fallen completely still, every eye fixed on the document before them, and the quiet, dignified man who had brought their world to a sudden, unexpected halt. The boardroom had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on the weathered document in the center of the conference table, a share certificate bearing Grayson Corp's logo and Henry Grayson's unmistakable signature. Ethan Grayson stared at it, like it was a snake that had appeared among his carefully arranged papers. "This is ridiculous," Ethan finally said, his voice tight with anger. "You can't seriously expect us to believe that my father secretly gave majority ownership of his company to the janitor." The way he emphasized janitor made it clear what he really wanted to say. Several executives shifted uncomfortably, darting glances between Ethan and Marcus, who remained standing calmly at the end of the table. "Not secretly, Mr. Grayson," Marcus replied evenly. "The transaction was properly registered with the SEC. The documentation has been maintained in trust all these years." He placed several more papers beside the share certificate. "Here are the original transfer documents, the trust agreement, and the registration records." Evelyn Carter, the longest-serving board member, hesitantly reached for the nearest document. "This appears authentic," she said, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "But why? Why would Henry do this? And why wait 35 years to mention it?" Nathan Brooks added accusingly, "Conveniently after Henry is dead, and can't confirm or deny any of this." Marcus removed a faded photograph from his briefcase and placed it on the table. It showed 3 men at Grayson Corp's first ribbon-cutting ceremony, Henry Grayson in the middle, flanked by a younger Ethan and a younger Marcus. It was the same image that hung in Ethan's office, except that version had been cropped to remove Marcus from the frame. "I met Henry Grayson in 1987, Marcus explained. "I was working nights at Wilson's machine shop, where Henry came to prototype his first product designs. I had a degree in mechanical engineering from Howard University, but in those days, companies weren't exactly lining up to hire black engineers. The implication hung in the air. Henry and I got to talking about his ideas. I made some suggestions that helped solve a design flaw he'd been struggling with." Ethan's face contorted with disbelief. Watching Marcus speak with knowledge no ordinary janitor should possess, Henry had been rejected by every bank in the city. Marcus continued, "Not because his idea wasn't sound, but because he lacked collateral. When he mentioned giving up, I offered him my savings, $30.0 I'd been putting aside, hoping to start my own business someday. $30. Isn't exactly a controlling stake in a multi-million-dollar corporation," Nathan interjected dismissively. "It was in 1988, Evelyn countered quietly. Henry was operating on a shoestring budget, $30. Whoa, would have been a lifeline. Henry insisted on making me a true partner," Marcus said. "He said anyone who believed in him enough to risk everything deserved an equal stake in the outcome." But that still doesn't explain why you've been working as a janitor all these years. Richard Evans, head of sales, said skeptically. If you owned half the company, why weren't you in the executive suite? A sad smile crossed Marcus's face. America in 1988 wasn't ready for a technology company co-founded by a black man. We both knew that. Investors would shy away. Partners would hesitate. Doors would close. So we agreed that Henry would be the public face of Grayson Corp, while I would remain in the background. As the janitor, Ethan scoffed. That's quite a background position. I needed a job at the company, a way to stay connected, to watch over my investment. Marcus replied. Henry suggested maintenance, because it would allow me access to every part of the building without drawing attention. His eyes swept the room. You'd be surprised what people say when they think no one important is listening. Several executives looked uncomfortable, recalling things they'd said in Marcus's presence over the years. When Henry died, Marcus continued, I considered stepping forward, but you were his son, and I wanted to give you the chance to continue his legacy. I kept hoping you would grow into the kind of leader he believed you could be. The disappointment in his voice was palpable. Instead, I've watched you systematically dismantle everything your father built: the culture of innovation, the respect for every employee, the commitment to integrity. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. You're trying to tell us my father secretly gave control of his company to the black janitor, and you both decided to keep it hidden for decades. Do you realize how insane that sounds? Watch your tone, Ethan. Evelyn warned softly. My tone. Ethan laughed incredulously. We're in the middle of a major restructuring, and this person walks in with some ancient paperwork and a far-fetched story, and you're concerned about my tone. Victor Lang, the CFO, had been examining the financial documents with growing concern. These appear legitimate, he admitted reluctantly. The signatures match our records, and the trust arrangement explains why these holdings never appeared in our standard reports. Even if these documents were valid at some point, Ethan argued, surely they've been superseded by one of our many corporate reorganizations over the years. Marcus shook his head. Each time the company restructured, the trust's holdings were preserved. Your own financial department processed the paperwork, though I doubt anyone questioned why a notation about original trust holdings remained present through every iteration. Victor's face paled. The OT designation. I always assumed it was some legacy account from the founding days. It was. Marcus confirmed quietly. Mine. The boardroom erupted in overlapping conversations. Through it all, Ethan's face grew increasingly flushed with anger and humiliation. Enough, Ethan finally shouted. Even if these documents are somehow legitimate, you can't just walk in here and start giving orders. There are procedures, protocols. That's correct, Marcus acknowledged. As majority shareholder, I can't directly manage day-to-day operations without board approval, but I can call for votes on major company decisions. He paused. So let's start with a simple one. I move to cancel the planned layoffs and asset liquidation discussed yesterday. Seconded, Evelyn said immediately. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. Evelyn, you can't be serious. Only someone deeply connected to this company would wait decades to step forward, Evelyn replied. Only someone with profound respect for Henry's legacy would give his son so many chances. She turned to Marcus. But why now? After all these years, why today? Because yesterday I heard you discussing the termination of 400 employees, people with families, mortgages, dreams, people who have given years to this company. And I heard how casually that decision was made, as if their livelihoods were just numbers on a spreadsheet. His voice remained measured, but there was steel beneath it. That's not the company Henry and I built. Before Ethan could respond, the door opened, and a security guard entered. Sorry for the interruption. Mr. Grayson, you pressed the security button. Ethan pointed at Marcus. Yes, this man has interrupted our meeting with fraudulent claims. Remove him immediately. The guard, a young man named David, looked uncertainly between them. Sir, is that Mr. Jackson? It's me, David, Marcus confirmed with a nod. He's trespassing in a closed meeting, Ethan insisted. I'm not sure I can forcibly remove Mr. Jackson without cause, David said uncomfortably. He doesn't appear to be causing a disturbance. The disturbance is his presence at a meeting he was not invited to. Actually, Evelyn interrupted. If Mr. Jackson is the majority shareholder, he has every right to be here. There's also the matter of these, Marcus said, placing a final folder on the table. Financial records showing systematic misappropriation of company funds, offshore accounts, inflated executive bonuses never approved by the board, pension funds diverted to personal holdings. He paused. All bearing your signature, Mr. Grayson. The color drained from Ethan's face. Those are authorized transactions. Not all of them, Victor admitted. I raised concerns about their legality. Daniel Reed entered with additional financial reports, faltering as he took in the scene, Marcus standing confidently, documents spread across the table, and Ethan looking cornered. Mr. Reed, Marcus acknowledged, I believe you've noticed some financial irregularities recently. Daniel looked at Nathan, who glared at him, then at Ethan, whose expression promised retribution. Finally, he looked at Marcus, the man who had endured countless indignities with quiet dignity. Yes, sir, Daniel replied. I've documented several suspicious transactions over the past year, including transfers to unnamed accounts that Mr. Grayson authorized. Ethan lunged to his feet. You're fired. Reed, clear out your desk immediately. I'm afraid you don't have that authority anymore, Marcus said. Given the evidence of financial impropriety, I move that Ethan Grayson be suspended as CEO, effective immediately, pending a full audit and investigation. Around the table, hands began to rise in support. Even Victor Lang, after a moment's hesitation, raised his hand. Only Nathan remained loyal to Ethan. This is insanity. You're all making a colossal mistake. Ethan stood frozen, watching his power evaporate. You can't do this, he whispered. You're just a janitor. Marcus met his gaze evenly. I was never just a janitor, Mr. Grayson. I was always an owner who chose to clean. By the following morning, the news that Marcus Jackson Grayson Corp's longtime janitor was actually the company's majority owner had spread through every department. Employees gathered in break rooms and near coffee machines, debating whether the incredible story could possibly be true. Marcus arrived at his usual early hour, but this time he didn't push a cleaning cart. Dressed in another modest but neat suit, he made his way through the lobby as conversation stuttered to a halt and eyes followed his progress. In the executive suite, Evelyn Carter had arrived early to help Marcus navigate his new role. We've called an all-staff meeting for 10:00 a.m., she informed Marcus as he entered what had been Ethan's office. People are confused and anxious. They need to hear directly from you. Marcus nodded, looking around the opulent office with its panoramic views. This seems excessive, he commented. Evelyn smiled. It was designed to intimidate. Ethan believed the CEO's office should make visitors feel small. That's not my style, Marcus replied, but it will do for now. We have more important matters to address. The door burst open, and Ethan Grayson stormed in, followed by Nathan Brooks and 2 men in expensive suits. Making yourself comfortable. I see, Ethan said with disdain. Mr. Grayson, Marcus acknowledged calmly. I didn't expect to see you here today. Did you think I'd just disappear? That I'd abandon the company my father built? Your father and I built, Marcus corrected gently. And no, I didn't expect you to disappear just to respect the board's decision. Ethan gestured to the men behind him. Allow me to introduce Charles Bennett and James Carter from Bennett and Carter Legal. They filed an emergency injunction this morning contesting your ownership claim. We have serious concerns about the legitimacy of documents that have suddenly appeared after 3 decades. The older lawyer spoke. The court has granted a temporary stay pending investigation. Evelyn reached for her phone. I'm calling our corporate counsel. No need, the second lawyer interjected. We've already spoken with them. Marcus accepted their business card. I understand you're doing your job, gentlemen, but my ownership is properly documented and has been legally maintained since the company's founding. A janitor as majority shareholder, Ethan scoffed. The courts will see through this farce in minutes. My occupation has no bearing on my legal rights. Marcus replied evenly. Though if you'd like to make this about my work as a janitor, I'm comfortable with that discussion. I've spent decades watching this company from ground level, understanding its operations in ways you never bothered to. Ethan's face darkened. You've disrupted a publicly traded company and created market instability based on questionable evidence. There will be consequences. Evelyn stepped forward. Ethan, this isn't productive. The board has voted, and pending any court ruling, Mr. Jackson is in charge. Nathan spoke up. You realize this uncertainty will tank our stock price. Is that what you want for the company you claim to care about? The uncertainty began when Ethan started gutting this company for personal gain, Marcus countered. I intend to end that uncertainty by restoring Grayson Corp to solid, ethical footing. The intercom buzzed with a message about corporate counsel calling and auditors arriving. Ethan watched with disbelief as Marcus handled these matters with unexpected poise. This isn't over. Jackson, Ethan hissed. My father would be ashamed to see his company in the hands of a— Choose your next words carefully. Evelyn interrupted sharply. Ethan bit back whatever he'd been about to say. In the hands of someone so clearly unqualified, he finished. Let's let the janitor play businessman until the courts set things right. As they turned to leave, Marcus called after them. Mr. Grayson, I'd like your security badge and company devices before you go. Standard protocol for suspended executives. Ethan gave him a venomous look but complied, slamming his badge and phone onto the desk before stalking out. When they were gone, Evelyn exhaled slowly. That was just the opening salvo. Ethan won't give up easily. I never expected he would, Marcus replied, but neither will I. The morning proceeded with Marcus meeting the auditors, who were professional but clearly surprised to be dealing with someone who didn't fit their preconception of a corporate owner. He assured them they would have complete access to all financial records, with Victor Lang's full cooperation. As the time approached for the all-staff meeting, Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, and now he needed to address hundreds of employees, many of whom had never noticed him during his years of service. The company auditorium was filled to capacity when Marcus walked onto the stage. The buzz of conversation died as employees registered the familiar face in unfamiliar attire. Some looked confused, others curious, and the maintenance staff wore expressions of stunned pride. Good morning, Marcus began. For those who don't know me, and I suspect that's most of you, my name is Marcus Jackson. Until yesterday, I was part of the janitorial staff here at Grayson Corp. Today, I stand before you as the majority shareholder and acting CEO. A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. Over the next 15 minutes, Marcus shared his history with Grayson Corp, the initial investment, the partnership with Henry, and the decision to remain in the background. He explained why he had finally decided to step forward and outlined his immediate priorities: cancelling the layoffs, conducting a financial audit, and reconnecting the company with its original mission. I know many of you are wondering what this means for your future here, he said. Let me be clear, good employees have nothing to fear. Unlike the previous administration, I value the contributions of every person in this company, from the newest intern to the most senior vice president. As Marcus continued, the mood in the room shifted. Initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. The maintenance staff looked particularly moved, some wiping away tears, others nodding vigorously. I've spent decades cleaning this building, watching and listening, Marcus said. I've emptied your trash cans and mopped your floors. I've overheard your frustrations and your ideas, so many brilliant ideas that were ignored because they came from the wrong level of the hierarchy. He paused, making eye contact with as many people as he could. Those days are over. Grayson Corp will now be a place where merit matters more than title, where innovation is nurtured, and where every employee is treated with dignity. As he concluded, the auditorium erupted in applause. Not everyone was clapping. Nathan and his allies stood stone-faced, but the majority seemed cautiously hopeful about this unexpected turn of events. After the meeting, Marcus found himself surrounded by employees eager to introduce themselves or simply shake his hand. It was strange, being seen after so many years of invisibility. Daniel Reed worked his way through the crowd. Mr. Jackson, that was incredible. No one would ever guess you haven't been running board meetings for years. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you for your courage yesterday. It wasn't easy. It wasn't, Daniel admitted. But seeing you stand up to Ethan gave me the push I needed. He lowered his voice. You should know Ethan's trying to rally support among key clients and investors. Nathan's been making calls all morning. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Ethan Grayson had returned, accompanied by several important-looking individuals. major investors. Daniel explained. Ethan must be trying to pressure the board through shareholder concerns. Evelyn appeared at Marcus's side. Ethan brought Theodore Hamilton and the Westridge Investment Group. They control about 15% of outstanding shares and are demanding an emergency meeting. Marcus took a deep breath. Then let's not keep them waiting. As he moved toward the confrontation, employees parted to watch. The power struggle was now playing out in public, with the company's future hanging in the balance. There he is, the janitor, who thinks he can run a multi-million-dollar corporation. Ethan announced loudly, "Mr. Hamilton, I believe you had questions about his qualifications." Theodore Hamilton, silver-haired and cold-eyed, assessed Marcus with undisguised skepticism. "Mr. Jackson, what makes you think you're qualified to lead this company? Do you have any business experience whatsoever?" The question was designed to embarrass, but Marcus had spent decades being underestimated. He'd earned advanced degrees through night school and had studied the company's operations from every angle. "Mr. Hamilton, the first understand your concerns," Marcus replied calmly. "So let me ask you this. Under Ethan Grayson's leadership, how has your investment performed over the past 5 years?" Hamilton blinked. "Below expectations," he admitted reluctantly. "And are you aware that during that same period, executive compensation increased by 47%, while average employee salaries rose only 2%? Or that the R&D budget was cut by 30%? Marcus continued with firm confidence. "I may have been a janitor, Mr. Hamilton, but I had a front row seat to every decision that has shaped this company. I know its strengths, weaknesses, and untapped potential better than anyone. And unlike some, my interest isn't in short-term gains that hollow out the company's future." "Pretty words," Ethan interjected. "But business isn't about sentiment, it's about results. Our stock is already down 7% this morning. How low does it need to go before you realize this experiment is a failure?" Marcus didn't flinch. "The market reacts to news, Mr. Grayson, but it ultimately rewards value, integrity, and sustainable growth, all qualities that have been in short supply under your leadership." He addressed the wider audience. "The stock price will fluctuate in the short term, that's expected, but I'm not focused on tomorrow's stock ticker. I'm focused on where Grayson Corp will be in 5 years, in 10 years. He turned back to the investors. "I invite you to join me in the boardroom. I'll share my vision for Grayson Corp's future and answer your questions. Once you understand the full picture, including the financial irregularities the audit will uncover, you'll agree that this transition is not just necessary, but long overdue." As Marcus led the investors away, he caught Ethan's expression, fury mixed with, for the first time, genuine fear. The narrative Ethan had counted on that Marcus would immediately flounder wasn't playing out as expected. The battle for Grayson Corp was far from over. Ethan still had resources and allies. But as Marcus walked through the building that he had cleaned for decades and now led, employees nodding respectfully as he passed, he felt a quiet confidence growing. This was his company, had always been his company, and he would fight with everything he had to preserve its integrity and secure its future. The power struggle had only just begun, but the balance was already shifting. 3 days after Marcus's confrontation with the investors, Grayson Corp was embroiled in full-blown corporate war. The initial shock had given way to clearly drawn battle lines, dividing the company. Marcus sat at the head of the conference table, reviewing preliminary findings from the auditors. Evelyn Carter and Daniel Reed wore equally grim expressions as they digested the information. "The irregularities are worse than we thought," Evelyn said, tapping a particularly damning page. "Systematic misappropriation, falsified board approvals, offshore accounts." Ethan wasn't just enriching himself, he was stealing from the company's future. Daniel nodded. "The R&D cuts weren't even about boosting quarterly profits. That money was redirected to shell companies that lead back to Ethan's personal holdings." "How many people knew about this?" Marcus asked. "Victor Lang certainly did. His signature is on most transfers. Nathan Brooks was involved in the shell companies, but most of the board seems to have been kept in the dark." The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Jackson, the department heads are gathered for your meeting. We'll be right there," Marcus replied, securing the audit documents in a folder. "Let's keep these findings close for now." We need more concrete evidence before going public. As they walked toward the larger conference room, Evelyn updated him on the latest developments. Ethan's been busy. He's filed additional legal challenges and been meeting with major clients, telling them the company is in chaos under your leadership. Has he succeeded in turning any against us? A few are wavering, but most are taking a wait-and-see approach. The bigger problem is internal. Ethan still has strong support among executives who fear change, or who might be implicated in his schemes. They entered the conference room, where 15 department heads waited, the atmosphere tense with uncertainty. Marcus had called this meeting to announce his restructuring plans, and everyone knew significant changes were coming. "Good morning," Marcus began. "As you know, Grayson Corp is at a crossroads. The past week has revealed serious issues with how this company has been managed, but it has also shown me the incredible potential that exists when we embrace transparency and merit." He outlined his vision, a company that prioritized innovation, treated all employees with respect, and operated with integrity. Then he moved to specifics, effective immediately. "I'm implementing several changes. First, all executive bonuses are suspended pending completion of the audit. Second, the planned layoffs are officially cancelled. Instead, we'll be reassigning personnel to revitalize our R&D division, which will receive a restored budget." The reactions around the table ranged from relief to visible discomfort. Linda Harper, the HR director who had been tasked with implementing the layoffs, raised a manicured hand. "Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice laden with skepticism, "while your intentions are admirable, these decisions seem financially unsound. The layoffs were deemed necessary for the company's survival. Were they?" Marcus countered. "Or were they necessary to maintain the excessive compensation packages that certain executives had become accustomed to?" He slid financial summaries across the table. "These numbers show that Grayson Corp remains fundamentally sound. Our problems stem not from having too many workers, but from systematic mismanagement at the top." Linda's lips thinned, but she didn't argue further. Others, however, were less restrained. "This is absurd," said Richard Evans, head of operations and a known ally of Ethan. "You've been CEO for less than a week, and you're already dismantling strategies that took months to develop. Just because you technically own shares doesn't mean you understand how to run a modern corporation." A tense silence fell. Everyone watched Marcus closely, curious how the former janitor would handle such direct insubordination. Marcus met Evans's gaze calmly. "Mr. Evans, I've spent 35 years observing this company from the ground up. I've witnessed which strategies succeeded and which failed. I've seen talented employees leave because their ideas were dismissed by executives who preferred comfort over innovation." He paused. "But more importantly, I've never confused position with intelligence or title with wisdom, a lesson that might serve you well." Evans flushed with anger, but fell silent as several department heads unsuccessfully tried to hide their smiles. "Now," Marcus continued, "I'd like each of you to prepare a detailed report on your department's current projects, personnel, and needs not the sanitized versions you prepared for Ethan, but honest assessments. I want to know what's working, what isn't, and what resources you actually require to succeed." As the meeting concluded, Marcus asked Daniel and the head of it to stay behind. When the others had left, he turned to the IT director. "Michael Torres, Mr. Torres, I need your help with something sensitive. We have reason to believe that company data may have been compromised. I need your team to secure our servers and recover any deleted files that might contain evidence of financial misconduct." Torres looked troubled. "Sir, I should mention that I received unusual instructions from Mr. Brooks last week. He asked me to perform a comprehensive data purge of certain executive files, citing routine maintenance. I delayed implementing it because it seemed irregular. That was probably an attempt to destroy evidence," Daniel said. "Can you recover anything that might have already been deleted?" "Most likely," Torres replied. "We keep redundant backups, and unless they use specialized wiping software, we should be able to recover significant data. Make this your top priority," Marcus instructed, "and keep it confidential." As they left the conference room, Marcus's assistant hurried toward them. "Mr. Jackson, there's a situation in the lobby. Ethan Grayson has returned with a news crew. He's making some kind of public statement." When they reached the lobby, They found Ethan surrounded by reporters and cameras, while employees gathered at a distance, watching with confused expressions. A travesty of corporate governance, Ethan was saying. An unqualified individual has temporarily seized control through questionable legal maneuvers, putting hundreds of jobs and millions in shareholder value at risk. Marcus stepped forward, catching Ethan's eye. For a moment, Ethan faltered before recovering with a practiced smile. "Ah, here he is now," he announced. "The janitor who would be king. Mr. Jackson, would you care to explain to these reporters why you think cleaning floors qualifies you to run a technology company?" The reporters swiveled their cameras toward Marcus, who stood perfectly still, evaluating the situation. This was a trap. Ethan was trying to provoke him into saying something that would come across as bitter or unqualified. "Mr. Grayson," Marcus replied calmly, "I'd be happy to discuss my qualifications, which include an engineering degree from Howard University and 35 years of watching this company evolve. But perhaps a more relevant question is why you feel the need to ambush your own company with negative publicity, rather than addressing the serious allegations of financial misconduct that have come to light." Ethan's confident expression wavered. Baseless accusations. The real issue here is a hostile takeover by someone with no business experience, no understanding of our industry, and no legitimacy beyond some ancient paperwork. "The legitimacy of my ownership has been confirmed by corporate counsel," Marcus countered. "As for my capabilities, I suppose we'll let the results speak for themselves, starting with the fact that, under my leadership, those 400 employees you plan to terminate will keep their jobs." A murmur ran through the gathered employees at this public confirmation. "Jobs they'll lose anyway when the company fails under amateur leadership." Ethan shot back. "But perhaps that's the point. Maybe you're not as concerned with the company's success as you are with settling old scores. The only person undermining this company right now is the man bringing camera crews into our lobby to broadcast unfounded attacks on its leadership," Marcus replied. Security personnel moved closer, making it clear that the impromptu press conference was over. Ethan's expression hardened as he realized his ambush had failed to provoke Marcus into an outburst. "This isn't over, Jackson," he said quietly, as the reporters began to pack up. "You may have won this round, but you've made powerful enemies who don't take kindly to having their corporate hierarchy upended by a man who used to clean their toilets." "I've spent my life dealing with powerful people who underestimated me," Marcus replied. "I'm still here, and now, finally, I'm being seen." As Ethan departed, employees began to applaud tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. The public confrontation had only reinforced Marcus's calm dignity in comparison to Ethan's desperate tactics. But the victory was short-lived. Later that afternoon, as Marcus was meeting with the R&D team, Daniel burst into the room, his face pale. "We have a problem," he announced. "A major problem. Ethan's gone nuclear." "What's happened?" Marcus asked. "He's frozen the company accounts," Daniel explained breathlessly. "Used his banking connections to put a hold on our operational funds, pending resolution of the ownership dispute. We can't access the payroll accounts, the vendor payment systems, nothing," Evelyn added grimly. "And that's not all. Nathan Brooks has been calling employees directly, offering positions at a new venture Ethan is starting, essentially trying to poach our top talent by creating panic about Grayson Corp's future." Marcus absorbed this news silently. Ethan was willing to hurt hundreds of innocent employees just to regain control. "Options?" he asked simply. "We can fight the account freeze legally, but that could take weeks," Evelyn replied. "As for the poaching, we need to reassure employees that their jobs are secure, but with the accounts frozen, we can't guarantee they'll be paid on time," Daniel finished. Marcus nodded, making a decision. "Call an emergency all-hands meeting in 30 minutes and get me Victor Lang, if he wants any chance at leniency when the audit concludes. Now's the time to earn it." 30 minutes later, the company auditorium was packed, the atmosphere thick with anxiety. Rumors had spread quickly about the frozen accounts, and employees were understandably concerned about their livelihoods. Marcus took the stage, flanked by Evelyn, Daniel, and to everyone's surprise, Victor Lang, who looked nervous but determined. "By now, many of you have heard that Ethan Grayson has taken the extraordinary step of freezing the company's financial accounts." Marcus began without preamble. "This is a desperate and reckless action that threatens not just the company, but your families and your futures. I want to be completely transparent about where things stand. He outlined the situation candidly, explaining the legal steps being taken to unfreeze the accounts and the worst-case timeline they might be facing. I know your primary concern is whether you'll receive your paychecks. Marcus continued. The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Mr. Lang has been working with our banking partners to establish emergency operational accounts, and I have personally provided collateral to ensure there will be no interruption in payroll. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Furthermore, Marcus added, I want to address the calls some of you may have received from Nathan Brooks. He's offering what seem like lifeboats from a sinking ship. But let me be clear, Grayson Corp is not sinking, it's transforming. And those who stay who help rebuild this company on a foundation of integrity and innovation, rather than greed and exploitation, will be recognized and rewarded for their loyalty. Victor Lang stepped forward, his voice uncharacteristically firm. I've worked closely with Ethan Grayson for years, and I was complicit in much of what's now coming to light. I'm cooperating fully with the audit because I've seen firsthand how far Ethan will go to maintain power and wealth. What he's doing now, freezing accounts that affect thousands of employees and their families, is just further proof of his disregard for anyone but himself. The auditorium was silent as employees processed this unexpected testimony from Ethan's longtime ally. As people filed out after the meeting, the mood had shifted from panic to cautious determination. Ethan's attempt to destabilize the company had instead galvanized its workforce, but the war was just beginning. That evening, as Marcus was preparing to leave, Daniel appeared in his office doorway, his expression grim. Security just called. Someone broke into the server room. They bypassed several layers of security. The evidence from the audit backups, are they secure? Yes, Daniel assured him, but they copied files from the active servers. Given the timing, Ethan, Marcus nodded, or someone working for him. What would be his play here? Information warfare, Evelyn suggested. Joining them. Anything he could use to embarrass the company, undermine your leadership, or potentially blackmail individuals who've switched allegiance. Marcus's phone rang an unknown number. It was Ethan, Mr. Jackson. His voice was smooth and confident. I hope today's little financial hiccup has given you something to think about. The only thing it's given me is further confirmation of your character, Marcus replied evenly. Ethan chuckled. Character, coming from a man who spent decades lying about his ownership that's rich. But I'm calling to offer you a way out, a generous one. Considering the circumstances, I'm listening. $15 million, Ethan proposed. Cash tax-free, through an offshore arrangement. All you have to do is sign over your shares and disappear. You can retire comfortably. Go anywhere you want. $15 million buys a lot of freedom for a man who spent his life cleaning up after others. The offer hung in the air for a moment. Marcus said nothing, letting Ethan wonder. Mr. Grayson, Marcus finally replied. There was a time when I had nothing but a Howard engineering degree that no one would honor, and the savings I'd scraped together. I gave every dollar to your father because I believed in his vision and his character. He offered me partnership when others wouldn't even offer me dignity. His voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath it. So let me be perfectly clear. There is no amount of money you could offer that would make me betray Henry Grayson's legacy or abandon the people who work for this company. Not $15 million. Not $15 billion. You'll regret this, Ethan hissed, his composure cracking. You have no idea what's coming. On the contrary, Marcus replied calmly. I know exactly what's coming, Justice. The following morning, Marcus arrived to find the lobby filled with protesters not against him, but supporting him. Employees had organized a solidarity gathering, many holding handmade signs with messages like Stand with Marcus and Ethics over Greed. People reached out to shake his hand or offer words of encouragement, a stark contrast to just a week ago, when most had barely noticed him. This is just the beginning, Daniel explained as they rode the elevator. It's gone viral overnight. Janitor CEO is trending, and people are sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination and invisible workers. I never wanted this to become about me personally, Marcus said. It's bigger than just you now, Daniel replied. You've become a symbol, People are inspired by your story, the qualified engineer forced to work as a janitor due to discrimination, silently owning the company for decades, before finally claiming your rightful place on the executive floor. Evelyn was waiting, phone pressed to her ear. She ended her call as they approached. The bank freeze is working its way through the courts, she reported. More pressing is that Ethan scheduled a press conference for noon. Our sources say he's planning to release documents from the server breach. Let's prepare for the worst, Marcus said. What's the most damaging information he could have obtained? There's something else you should know, Daniel added. I've been working with Michael Torres all night, and we found something unexpected in the server logs. He held up a flash drive. Whoever broke in didn't just take data, they left something behind. A hidden program designed to corrupt our databases on command. A kill switch that would have destroyed critical company data. Evelyn questioned. Daniel smiled. Michael isolated and neutralized it before it could be activated, but more importantly, he traced it back to its source. The program was created on Nathan Brooks's laptop and installed using his credentials. That's corporate sabotage, Evelyn breathed. A criminal offense. And we have the evidence. I think it's time we played offense rather than defense, Marcus said. Get everything to our legal team immediately. Evelyn, contact the authorities. This goes beyond corporate politics now. Within hours, the company was buzzing with new developments. Word had leaked that federal agents were coming to investigate allegations of corporate espionage and financial crimes. Ethan's noon press conference had been mysteriously delayed, then postponed indefinitely. Shortly after 2:00 p.m., Marcus was meeting with department heads when his assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Sir, there are federal agents in the lobby. They're asking to speak with you, and they've just arrested Nathan Brooks as he tried to leave the building. In the lobby, a small crowd had gathered to watch as Nathan was escorted to a waiting vehicle, hands cuffed behind his back. Two agents approached as Marcus arrived. Mr. Jackson, I'm Special Agent Simmons, FBI, Cybercrime Division. We'd like to ask you some questions about the evidence submitted regarding unauthorized access to your company's servers. Of course, Marcus agreed. Let's talk in my office. As they headed toward the elevators, Daniel hurried over, holding up his tablet. Mr. Jackson, you need to see this. The headline read, Breaking, Ethan Grayson, former CEO of Grayson Corp., arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. The accompanying image showed Ethan being led from his penthouse by federal agents, his expression a mask of disbelief and fury. That was fast, Evelyn remarked. Agent Simmons nodded. We've actually been investigating Mr. Grayson for several months based on whistleblower reports about financial improprieties. Your evidence regarding the server breach was the final piece we needed. Daniel looked confused. Whistleblower reports. From whom? Agent Simmons glanced at Marcus. That information is confidential, but the investigation was well underway before Mr. Jackson assumed control of the company. The significance of those words wasn't lost on Evelyn or Daniel, who both turned to look at Marcus with new understanding. His decision to step forward hadn't been as sudden as it appeared. He'd been laying groundwork, gathering evidence, preparing for this moment. Later that afternoon, after finishing with the federal agents, Marcus found a moment of solitude in his office. The day's events had moved at a dizzying pace, with Ethan's arrest dominating news cycles and sending shockwaves through the business community. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was Daniel. You were the whistleblower, weren't you? Daniel asked without preamble. You've been documenting Ethan's misconduct for years. Marcus neither confirmed nor denied it, but his slight smile was answer enough. All those years as a janitor. Daniel continued. You weren't just cleaning, you were watching, listening, gathering evidence. The invisible man that everyone underestimated because of your race and your job. When you're invisible, Marcus replied quietly, you see things others don't want seen. You hear things not meant to be heard. It's a powerful position, if used properly. Before Daniel could respond, Marcus's assistant announced that the board members had assembled for an emergency meeting. In the boardroom, the remaining board members waited anxiously. Several seats were conspicuously empty, those belonging to Ethan's closest allies, who had either resigned or been implicated in the growing scandal. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Marcus began, As you're aware, today's events have fundamentally changed our situation. Ethan Grayson and several of his associates now face serious criminal charges. The company's reputation has taken a hit, but we have an opportunity to emerge stronger by demonstrating complete transparency and accountability. He outlined his immediate priorities: cooperating fully with authorities, implementing stronger financial controls, and beginning the process of making whole those who had been harmed by Ethan's actions, from shareholders to employees whose pension funds had been compromised. Most importantly, Marcus concluded, we need to restore trust in our products, in our company, and in our leadership. It won't happen overnight, but if we commit to doing business with integrity, Grayson Corp can become the company Henry Grayson and I always envisioned. As the meeting concluded and board members filed out, Evelyn remained behind, a thoughtful expression on her face. You know, she said, when you first walked into that board meeting a week ago, I thought Ethan was right that this was some kind of mistake or scam. I couldn't imagine how the janitor I'd barely noticed could possibly be the legitimate owner of the company. Marcus smiled slightly. Most people couldn't. That was the point. But now, Evelyn continued, I can't imagine anyone better suited to lead Grayson Corp forward. You've seen this from every angle, known its strengths and weaknesses in ways the rest of us never could. She offered her hand. I'm proud to work with you, Mr. Jackson. Marcus shook her hand firmly. Thank you, Evelyn. And call me Marcus. After all we've been through this week, I think we're beyond formalities. As evening fell, Marcus found himself alone in the office that had once belonged to Ethan Grayson and, before him, Henry Grayson. On the wall hung the photograph of Henry and Ethan at the company's ribbon-cutting ceremony, the one that had deliberately excluded Marcus from the frame. Carefully, he removed it and placed it in a drawer. In its place, he hung the complete photograph that showed all three of them, Henry in the center, flanked by Ethan and Marcus, the true founding team of Grayson Corp. It was a small act of restoration, but a symbolic one. The truth, long hidden, was finally on display for all to see. 2 months after Ethan Grayson's arrest, Grayson Corporation was still healing from the wounds of the corporate war. The initial excitement had faded, replaced by the sobering reality of rebuilding a company whose reputation and finances had been severely damaged by years of mismanagement. Marcus sat in what was now simply called the CEO's office. He had removed much of Ethan's ostentatious decor, replacing it with a more practical, accessible arrangement. The wall of intimidating awards had been relocated to a company museum in the lobby, and the furniture had been swapped for pieces that encouraged conversation rather than emphasized hierarchy. There was a gentle knock at the door, and Evelyn entered, followed by Daniel and several other executives who formed Marcus's core leadership team. The quarterly numbers are in, Evelyn announced, her expression carefully neutral as she distributed folders to everyone present. It's a mixed picture. Marcus opened his folder and studied the figures. Revenue was down 12% compared to the previous year, and the stock price had yet to recover from its initial plunge. However, employee retention had improved dramatically, and early indicators showed a significant uptick in productivity. The market is still punishing us for the instability, remarked David Willis, the new CFO who had replaced Victor Lang, but the fundamentals are stronger than they appear. We've eliminated wasteful spending, redirected resources to R&D, and our employee satisfaction scores are the highest they've been in a decade. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. We always knew this would be a long road. Ethan didn't destroy this company overnight, and we won't rebuild it overnight either. He turned to Daniel. How's the new talent acquisition program coming along? Daniel, who had been promoted to Director of Strategy and Innovation, grinned with enthusiasm. Better than expected. We've actually had an influx of applications from top-tier talent who specifically mention wanting to work for the company with the janitor CEO. Your story has become a powerful recruitment tool, and we've rehired 12 of the employees who were wrongfully terminated under Ethan's leadership, added Linda Harper. The HR director had initially been skeptical of Marcus, but, after seeing his leadership style firsthand, had become one of his strongest supporters. Their experience and institutional knowledge have been invaluable during this transition. Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. What about the pension restitution program? Moving forward according to plan, David confirmed. We've identified all employees whose retirement funds were impacted by Ethan's schemes, and the first round of repayments will go out next week. It's stretching our cash reserves, but it's the right thing to do. It is, Marcus agreed firmly. This company was built on the hard work of its employees, all of them, from the executive suite to the maintenance staff. Making them whole is our first priority. The meeting continued with updates from each department. Engineering reported promising progress on 3 new product lines that had been sidelined under Ethan's leadership. Marketing presented a campaign focused on the company's renewed commitment to innovation and integrity. Legal provided an update on the ongoing proceedings against Ethan and his associates, most of whom had agreed to plea deals in exchange for testimony. As the meeting concluded, Marcus held up a hand to keep everyone in their seats. Before we disperse, I want to address something important. I know many of you are concerned about the continued pressure from shareholders for immediate results. Some have suggested we should consider more aggressive cost-cutting or even explore acquisition offers. He paused, making eye contact with each person around the table. I want to be absolutely clear. Grayson Corp is not for sale, and we will not sacrifice long-term sustainability for short-term profits. The path we're on is not the easiest one, but it's the right one. I'm asking for your continued faith and patience. After the executives filed out, Evelyn lingered behind, a thoughtful expression on her face. You know, when Henry Grayson ran this company, he used to say something similar in tough times. The right path isn't always the shortest one. You remind me of him more than Ethan ever did. Marcus smiled slightly at the comparison. Henry was a visionary. I'm just trying to honor what we built together. Well, you're doing more than that, Evelyn replied. You're transforming this place. People actually want to come to work now they feel valued, heard. She hesitated before adding, though I still think you should let the maintenance staff clean your office. It sends an odd message when the CEO is spotted emptying his own trash can. Marcus chuckled. Old habits. Besides, I like to check in with my former colleagues. They still see things the rest of us miss. Later that afternoon, Marcus made his way to the cafeteria, not the executive dining room, which he had converted into a general meeting space, but the main employee cafeteria. It had become his custom to eat lunch there at least twice a week, sitting with different groups each time to hear their ideas and concerns directly. Today, he joined a table of engineers from the revitalized R&D department. They were initially startled by his presence but quickly warmed up as he asked pointed, knowledgeable questions about their current projects. I still can't believe you understand the technical specs so well, admitted Sarah Jennings, a senior engineer. Most executives I've worked with can barely follow the simplified presentations we prepare for them. I did have an engineering degree from Howard, Marcus reminded her with a smile. And I've spent 35 years listening to engineers discuss their projects while I cleaned their labs. You'd be surprised how much you can learn when no one notices you're there. Well, we notice you now, sir, another engineer remarked. And it makes a difference knowing the CEO actually understands what we're trying to accomplish. After lunch, Marcus took a deliberate detour through the maintenance department, located in the building's basement. He could have summoned its supervisor to his office, but he preferred to see things firsthand the way he always had. The maintenance staff greeted him with a mixture of respect and familiarity. To them, he wasn't just the CEO who had once been a janitor, he was Marcus, their former colleague who still remembered their names and families. How's the new equipment working out, Frank? Marcus asked the department supervisor, gesturing to the recently purchased floor polishers and industrial vacuums. Frank beamed with pride. Makes the job twice as efficient, Mr. Jackson. And the ergonomic designs mean fewer back injuries. The team can't thank you enough. It should have been done years ago, Marcus replied. Proper tools aren't a luxury, they're a necessity. He glanced around the maintenance area, which had been renovated with improved lighting, ventilation, and actual break space. Any other needs I should know about? Just one thing, Frank said. Some of the guys were wondering about that education assistance program you mentioned last month. Is that still happening? Marcus nodded firmly. The board approved it yesterday. Any employee who wants to pursue higher education or technical certification will receive company support tuition assistance. Flexible scheduling, the works. He smiled slightly. We might have more engineers hiding in the maintenance department, just waiting for their opportunity. As evening approached, Marcus found himself drawn to a part of the building he had visited countless times as a janitor, but never as CEO, the original research lab, where Henry Grayson had developed the company's first breakthrough product, now preserved as something of a historical exhibit. The small room contained the original equipment, workbenches, and even some of Henry's handwritten notes. Marcus stood in the doorway, memories washing over him. He could almost see Henry hunched over that workbench, sleeves rolled up, explaining his latest idea with infectious enthusiasm. They had spent many late nights in this room, Marcus offering suggestions, while officially there to clean, Henry incorporating them without ego or hesitation. "I thought I might find you here," said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to find an elderly man in a well-worn suit, James Howell, the company's longest-serving board member and Henry Grayson's old friend. Howell had been in poor health recently and rarely came to the office, but he had consistently supported Marcus from the moment his ownership was revealed. "Just revisiting old ghosts," Marcus admitted. Howell nodded, moving to stand beside him. "Henry would be proud. You know not just of what you've accomplished these past months, but of your patience all those years. I never understood why you stayed in the background for so long. It was different times," Marcus replied simply, "and then it became habit. I suppose. The longer I waited, the harder it seemed to step forward. Well, I'm glad you finally did." Howell gestured around the lab. Henry always said his greatest invention wasn't any product. It was building a company with a soul. Ethan nearly destroyed that. "You're bringing it back." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "Turn on the news. Channel 6.now. Concerned." Marcus excused himself and hurried to the nearest conference room with a television. When he turned it on, he understood Daniel's urgency immediately. Ethan Grayson's face filled the screen as a news anchor explained. In a surprising development, former Grayson Corp CEO Ethan Grayson held a press conference just minutes ago where he made this statement. The footage cut to Ethan, standing outside the courthouse, looking somewhat thinner, but no less arrogant. "The charges against me are a fabrication, part of a calculated takeover by individuals who exploited legal technicalities to seize control of my father's company. I look forward to clearing my name and returning Grayson Corporation to its rightful leadership." Marcus watched impassively as Ethan continued to spin his narrative, painting himself as the victim of a conspiracy. When the segment ended, he turned to find Daniel, Evelyn, and several other executives who had gathered behind him. "He's still dangerous," Evelyn warned. "Even facing charges, he has connections, resources, and he's desperate," Daniel added. "The plea deals his associates have taken make his position increasingly precarious." Marcus nodded, considering their concerns. "Increase security protocols as a precaution, but otherwise, we continue as planned. Ethan's fighting for his freedom now, the company is secondary." Later that night, after most employees had gone home, Marcus remained in his office, reviewing plans for a new employee ownership program. The concept was ambitious, allowing every Grayson Corp employee, regardless of position, to earn company shares through a combination of tenure and performance metrics. A notification on his computer screen alerted him to an email with a subject line that made him pause. From Henry Grayson's archives. The message was from Howell, sent after their meeting earlier. It contained a single attachment, a scanned letter in Henry's handwriting, dated just weeks before his death 15 years ago. Marcus opened it with a sense of trepidation. "My dear friend Marcus," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm no longer there to say these things in person. I've asked James to hold this letter until the day you finally claim your rightful place at Grayson Corp, a day I've encouraged you to embrace for years. I understand why you've chosen to remain in the background. The world wasn't ready when we started, and perhaps it still isn't. But Grayson Corp was always meant to be more than just another company. It was meant to be proof that innovation and integrity could coexist, that a business could prioritize people over profits and still succeed. I've watched Ethan with growing concern. He has my name, but not my vision. He sees the company as a vehicle for personal wealth and power, not as the force for positive change we intended. I fear what will become of our legacy in his hands. This is why I never changed our original ownership arrangement.